Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of She-Hulk. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So now in the aftermath of her debut as She-Hulk to the public, Jennifer has to kind of deal with the not necessarily like the fallout, but more of a positive fallout. Well, for most of because a lot of people are celebrating her, which I also love. Titania is the character's name, Jamila Jamil's character. Also, like, oh, she's like a superhero influencer. I'm like, that's a thing in this universe. I was like, well, I guess you can make the argument, like, to some extent, I guess Tony was like, yeah, he ran a corporation and stuff, but I guess to some extent he was also he was kind of a superhero influencer too. But the fact is they label her that, and it's like, oh, it's just kind of an established thing already. I mean, we never really had a chance to like really breathe in the Marvel universe to see and know about everything and everyone that's out and about, you know? So either way, Jennifer's being celebrated, but it's like, yeah, but you know, you need a Hulk out, and she's like, wait, She-Hulk? Like, come on, like, it doesn't, I can't, like, I get it though, it's like, cool, I can't get my own name, it's just derivative of Hulk, and, you know, Nikki being like, yeah, Hulk wasn't even that great of a name either, so it's like, you know, She-Hulk, Lady Hulk, which I'm almost like, oh, are those supposed to be a little bit of, I mean, I wonder those names Jennifer ended up having in the comics or over the years or something, or is that almost supposed to be a play and just kind of like just kind of like the Lady Hulk thing, but it's like, no, I'm, you know, I said Natalie, Jesus, I was about to say Natalie Portman, Jane Foster had to be like, no, I'm the Mighty Thor, Jesus, I can't talk today, sorry. Either way, once again, she is celebrated, and then her boss comes over. I didn't talk about it at all last episode, but I should have. I do like the whole thing of like, high metabolism thing. So she can't get drunk. Neither her or the Hulk can get drunk. But problem is, the moment she reverts to human form, it immediately hits her like a freight train, which I think is so fascinating. And her boss kind of fires. It's like, no, like you saved people's lives and everything, so it worked out. But you're too much of a liability for us to keep, because they ended up losing the case because it was a mistrial, because yeah, the jury was kind of influenced by you. It's like you saved their lives, so they were going to be extremely biased toward you, which makes sense, but it's still kind of like a nope, and no one wants to hire him, which I even love that. What is it, attorney for hire or something like that. I'm reading too much into it, but I almost wonder like if there's almost like almost an element of yeah, I'm an attorney for hire, but almost kind of like the whole heroes for hire thing. Like, I wonder, is there like a little, I'm thinking that in the back of my mind, because it's Marvel and stuff, but I'm probably thinking too much about it. But like, no one wanted to hire her. Then she has to go to a family dinner, which, you know, it's just like, that's just the talk of the conversation. It's like, oh my God, there's this boy, it's like, Mom, stop trying to hook me up with people. It's like, no. Oh, he's far too young for you. He actually wants to be a superhero. And I told him my daughter's a superhero. It's like, Mom, stop giving strangers my phone number. And just everyone talking about everything. Because it's like, cool, she's out of a job. But her cousin Chet is like, yo, like, I just got promoted at like where he's working. And her dad's like, okay, so about that Hawkeye guy, it's like, Dad, I might be a hero, but I don't know these people. It's like, yeah, like, about the Arrow thing. Like, her dad asking the $1 million question that literally everyone asks. I mean, that's probably one of those big questions about the Avengers. Like, does Hawkeye go back and pick up all those other arrows? Even during Hawkeye, we never really got an answer to that. So, the fact is that that's an element, a thing to all of this. And just they're asking all these questions. There was something else they said that I really love, and I do love her dad checking in on her, asking if she's actually okay. And it's like, right, you know, despite everything, it's like, because she's like, right, I was trying to do the right thing, but I didn't want my debut to the world to be like this, kind of being thrust in the limelight. But at the same time, it, you know, cost me my job and everything. Because she made a whole point to Bruce last episode, like, right, she didn't want to be a Hulk. She wanted to, like, live her life, you know? Like, hey, I was right, he was wrong. The fact is, I can live my life without having a Hulk out, but I did. I just, you know, it's like, right, I had the power, and I have the responsibility. I might as well take care of it. I mean, use it, right? So, but I love that line from her dad being like, well, I mean, at least she didn't destroy a city, and you're like, ooh, that is probably a complicated thing. Like, the general public definitely doesn't know. I mean, I'm curious, like, how many people actually do know that the Walters are related to the Banners, that Bruce is, like, family, you know? I'm curious, like, how many people actually know that. Because, once again, the government knows that, which it's such an interesting thing, because it's like, right, the moment Bruce made his debut as the Hulk, and just everything we've seen him do in the MCU alone and kind of get mixed up in, right, they did say, like, yeah, like, despite how many lives you save, Bruce did save, like, billions of lives with the snap of a finger, and it's just like, oh, that is always going to be held up, like, that's going to be, like, the family sense of pride of, like, oh, it used to be, like, oh, we kind of used to be ashamed of the Hulk, but now it's like, hey, not only is he a hero, kind of makes up for him destroying cities and mass destruction, like he calls in Age of Ultron, at the very least, he did save not only, half the population on Earth by bringing them back, he also, saved the universe by snapping too. But also, you have to think about it too. Like, some people probably are pissed at him for that too, because we know what this, like, economical fallout and just, like, the general geopolitical angle of, oh, all these people suddenly popping up. Like, it's just something to really think about, and I think that's such an interesting angle. But getting back to it, that the family, like, had that whole complicated thing of, like, Bruce kind of ended up destroying the city. Ugh, yikes. But now it's like, okay, we don't have to worry about it as much because he's Professor Hulk right now, so he's not as much of on a rampage, plus, once again, he has a whole, like, in-game thing of snapping half the universe back, so that kind of gives him a free pass to some extent, I guess. Either way, I just thought that was kind of interesting. But also I love that we got a little bit of a quirk of Jennifer's personality, that she has a tendency to, like, kind of, like, go on, like, she doesn't really get, and maybe it's the lawyer in her, like, kind of, like, always try to get her point across, like, she's quick to be like, they're trying to get everything out, and just everyone's like, okay, but I see, like, she just keeps going and going, and I think that's, like, a neat little quirk to her personality. But just when she was kind of feeling low, it's like, hey, I actually got hired at a place. It's like, oh, a new Superhuman law division, but she got hired because they want She-Hulk to be the face of the operation, and it's like, and I love the whole thing of, like, yeah, but I get to choose my own paralegal. It's like, I don't care who your paralegal is. And it's like, fine, do whatever you want. But it's like, yeah, you need to be She-Hulk, like, all the time. And we kind of go a little bit more on, like, the fourth wall breaking and kind of correcting some thoughts I potentially had. Because I was wondering, like, okay, so is she only going to break the fourth wall in private? Because if she didn't, maybe people would start noticing, once again, maybe kind of like Bruce, once again, Fleabag, hot priest type of situation. But it's like, no, which obviously is a weird thing to say in conjunction with, like, She-Hulk and, like, that's kind of a weird, like, trend. But you get what I'm saying, like, the analogy of, like, right, how he kind of saw through, like, her doing that. But it's more so, I guess at that time, she hadn't quite mastered the fourth wall breaking yet, so she was almost like, oh, I could do that? Whoa, that's crazy. Why, I mean, once again, will they ever lean into what that's all about? Like, why she has that ability and he does. I mean, yes, it's an homage to the fact that she's the first character in the comics, like, amongst Marvel to do that, but she was not even just amongst, she was the first character in the Marvel comics to do that. But I wonder, will they explain that, and does it need to be explained? No, it is what it is. It's just, but the fact is that she does, like, she's like complaining about, like, oh my god, like, no one else I'm sure had, like, oh, look at those chuckleheads in there, like, laughing it up and, like, bitch, they didn't have to deal with this on their first day. And he's like, so her boss is like, so what do you think? And she's like, I'm agnostic, I think. And he's like, huh, interesting. And she's like, I'm going to be thinking about that years from now about what I just said. Because she was so busy breaking the fourth wall, she did not hear anything her boss said. So, once again, just clarifying a little bit of, like, some thoughts I had about what the fourth wall breaking might have been. But now it's like, oh, because if you didn't listen to the last episode, I thought, like I was saying earlier, I thought she was only going to do it in private, but she can do it in a room full of people. Granted, she's going to miss out on a conversation. So she's still probably working her way through the whole fourth wall breaking thing. So, but her first case is Emil Blonsky, obviously, and it's like something she's not too keen on, because it's like, right, this guy did try and kill my cousin Bruce. It's like, yeah, we're aware of that. It's fine. It's like, what? No, I don't know if I feel comfortable. I'd like to take literally any other job, and it's like, no, you're going to take this job or you don't have a job at all. So, yeah. They also got, her and Nikki also got introduced to Pug, which I love him being like, also like, here's a whole bunch of snacks and stuff, plus here's a map to the bathroom that you can poop, and they're like, Thank you. And I love just like bathroom, like the little map. You even see it even more at the end of the episode and during the credit sequence. Like, oh, bathroom to poop in, bathroom not to poop in. But if I'm not mistaken, that's the actor who plays Adrian Chase, isn't it? It sure is, Josh Segarra. I thought so. There was something else I knew him from too, but immediately I was like, yeah, that's interesting timing too, because obviously there's the Peacemaker show with Vigilante. Obviously Adrian Chase this is Adrian Chase in Arrow. He played Prometheus, but in the comics, Adrian Chase is Vigilante, but obviously Vigilante circumstances were different in Arrow than it was, because Freddie, was it Stroma? Plays him in Peacemaker. Once again, just the timing and stuff like that's just interesting. Either way, but I was like, oh man, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, you know, just a DC Marvel crossover in that regard. I just thought was kind of interesting. Either way, she visits Emil, and Emil is not the person that he was. The, I guess, psychopath you kind of thought he was. It's like, yo, it's been years, you know, namaste. Like, I'm literally changed. I mean, physically, I mean, obviously, but he's also, like, spiritually. Like, you know, it's like, oh, does that mean you can no longer become, Abomination, or do you choose not to become the Abomination? Which I think is kind of an interesting first case for her for many different regards. I mean, obviously the personal connection of, right, you try to kill my cousin Bruce, but also the fact is that you have kind of denied like your Abomination side of things, and I've kind of want to kind of deny my She-Hulk side of things. So I think that's kind of an interesting little parallel there. But he's like, yeah, like, you know, he kind of breaks down like what his circumstances are. He's like, yeah, I was a soldier. I was given, you know, it's like your cousin was seen as a threat. Now he's kind of seen as a hero while I'm locked up. He's like, how is that justice? He's like, that's pretty jacked up. And then he's also talking about the fact that they gave me the super soldier serum, which you're immediately like, because Jennifer went lawyer mode. It's like, whoa. They gave you the super soldier serum, and that's what led to all of this? It's like, well, the argument could also be made that it's like, well, there's other people who had the super soldier serum, that being Steve Rogers, and he didn't turn out to be a terrible person. But and maybe that's some stuff they're going to bring up during the actual court case too. It's like, but literally everyone else has gotten the super soldier serum, has kind of done some terrible stuff. It's like, well, Bucky Barnes was kind of the Winter Soldier. Then you have the whole John Walker thing. Like, there's been a lot more people who have negatively been affected by the super soldier serum. I mean, there was the whole Flag Smashers thing too. So there's also, I would assume some of that would get brought up in like Emil's court case at the very least. So I just think that's kind of an interesting thing of like, but like, because the argument is the super soldier serum just amplifies who you already are. So it's like Emil saying like, oh yeah, like I'm not a bad guy. It's like, well, maybe you were. And the super soldier serum just amplifies what's there. To be fair, we don't know who Bucky would have been. Bucky could have been, you know, the next he could have been like Steve if given the opportunity, but obviously the whole, you know, Hydra brainwashing, so that could be something that gets brought up in court as well. So, and I love that he's like, hey, like, I've also written haikus for all my victims. And she's like, no, you don't have to do. He's like, and he starts off, she's like, no, just stop. Like, maybe I'll take your case. And ultimately, she ends up calling up Bruce. And he's like, you know, she's like, yeah, I feel bad about taking this case. He's like, no, you're calling me because you are taking the case. She's like, yes, I'm calling you because I'm taking the case. You know, how do you feel about it? He's like, no, I'm cool. He's like, me and Emil, like, yeah, like, the fact of the matter is, he's actually sent me a very heartfelt letter and haiku, like, we're actually, like, well past. I mean, he's like, I mean, we fought years ago. I mean, I'm a different person. Literally, I'm like, shut up. I was like, shut up. I love it. Of course you're going to make a joke about it. I mean, there's layers to it, because yes, you are a different person, both many different regards. Yes, the obvious one being you're a different actor, but also, a different actor playing a role, but also the fact is that you also, are a different person because you're not the same Hulk you were then either, which that's also another thing too, because obviously like the Hulk then is different from the Hulk that we got in the MCU. I mean, also like just design wise and everything too, but also like you've also going through your changes as a Hulk, being like this you know, Professor Hulk. So, and even finding out about his cousin's name of like, oh yeah, what are they calling you? It's like, She-Hulk. He's like, oh no. He's like, no, I love it. That's cool. So, but we also see that Hulk is off planet right now. So the fact is, that's definitely going to be interesting going forward. That Sakaran ship, like last episode, is like, yeah, I got to check into that. So it's something that's calling for him to be off planet. So that's definitely interesting. I wonder, is this the last time we'll see Bruce in the show, or at the very least maybe for a while? I just thought that was interesting. So she also doesn't have him to go to for advice during this whole circumstances too. So that's just that's definitely going to be an interesting thing. But and obviously our stinger at the end there being like, oh, video footage was released of Emil Blonsky participating in a cage fight. It's like, oh, okay, so Shang-Chi has already happened, and it's like somehow he got out. So you're like, okay, so that's probably why Wong is probably coming up, because he probably sees everything that Emil's going through. Also, what was this about Emil? And he's like, yeah, I just want to, like, with my 6 soulmates or something. And it's like, wait, what? Like, what? Go back to that. Who are these 6 soulmates? Like, are you mean that literally? Like, oh, like you found like 6 soulmates, or is that being figurative for something else? Like, I'm thinking too much about it. But you're like, well, could people have thrown out his name for potential? We know there is going to be a Thunderbolts movie, so you're like, could that be like setting the stage for that this early? Maybe, I don't know. Or does he just mean like, oh, I found love, like I legitimately mean soulmates, or are these like some of the people he got mixed up in? I'm curious to see what ends up happening with that. I'm reading too much in it. I just thought that was interesting. I was like, I don't know whether to take that literally or figuratively by you found like your soulmates and stuff like that. Soulmates, like that's just kind of interesting. How's that whole situation going to work out if it means literally? But I don't know if that's supposed to be a thing of like, oh, they're all aware of each other and they're okay with it, or like I said, or is it just kind of a ploy and it's like, no, like these, I say soulmates, but it's because like we all like having the same commonality behind us. I mean, he is like a trained soldier, and if Jennifer is able to get him pardoned from all this, it would put him in a position to be a part of the Thunderbolts and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's just going to be fascinating to see what ends up happening. But it's like, cool, that's just going to make things tougher for her. But I get the feeling that's why Wong's going to be in the story, because he's like, right, he is, I don't know if Jennifer ended up contacting him because she probably hears from Emil. He's like, yeah, this guy Wong came to me. It's like, all right, you got in contact with Wong, and then Wong came to you. So I wonder how many people in public, like, people know about Doctor Strange, but how many, I mean, you think because they know about Doctor Strange, you have to know about Wong. It's the same conversation I had into the Multiverse of Madness, because Home Dude came to Steven being like, yo, was that the only way things could work, is like for everyone to disappear for 5 years? Like, was that really like, so I'm like, wait, the entire public knows about, the general things of like what went down at Endgame? Once again, how do people know that? We've seen that time and time again. WandaVision references stuff that went down in Endgame that the public should know about. Then you had that conversation in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, kind of referencing people shouldn't know about that conversation. But then you also found out like, well, we kind of know that maybe it's Scott out there running his mouth because he has a podcast and also potentially a book, which maybe the book hasn't been written, or maybe the podcast hasn't been started yet. We know they set that up in Ms. Marvel, but we don't know about Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Like, there's reference to, like, people who were there to see the trailer talked about, like, right, he has a book he's written about, being an Avenger and everything. So maybe he hasn't started a podcast yet. Maybe he'll start the podcast maybe in the movie or by the end of the movie, or maybe that's an in-between thing. Depending on the correlation between when Quantumania takes place in conjunction with Ms. Marvel, or so we'll ultimately have to wait and see where all of this ends up taking us. I legitimately want a definitive answer on how much the general public knows about everything Avengers related, so, but I'm very excited to see where the next episode takes us going forward with all of this. I also love the little stinger at the end where it's like, yeah, you being the Hulk of the family and not having to worry about you kind of raging and stuff like that. Bruce is probably so busy, like, all around, like, they don't have a Hulk that they can kind of call anytime they want. So it's like, yeah, she kind of gets stuck doing like a lot of the manual labor and stuff like that. But I think that is kind of cute. Like, anytime they need something, it's like, oh, Jennifer, can you Hulk out a little bit and help on something? I do think that's cute, so. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.